Hi guys, how are you doing? I'm just decorating the plushie tree. Yay! Merry Christmas to all. Oh man, I can't tell you how happy I am that I can finally have a proper Christmas tree in my studio or in my office, whatever you want to call this room, okay? Office studio, okay? It's not little mini tree or not little plastic or cardboard one or whatever. Actually, I do need to get one to put next to Barry, so remind me that later, Barry. But no, a proper, actual Christmas tree. Check this out. It changes colors. I have all the power! Alright, and I didn't know how to decorate it at first, but then I remembered, wait a second, I am a nerd, don't know if you knew that, but I therefore have like 5 boxes of Pokemon plushies, so they filled out the gaps pretty good there. We also have some One Piece there. We got Chopper cosplaying Law down there. We got Saitama in the center. We got the random llama. Do you see the random llama? You see the random llama? And then I found a star pillow from Super Mario, and I'm like, well, that has to go on the top of the tree. And it was like the perfect height, so it like wedged it against the ceiling, and it's great. And we got Chopper's hat up there too. So, you know, Merry Christmas to all. Also, make sure to subscribe to Two Spookies Christmas YouTube channel, because he's making a YouTube channel about Christmas theme things, I guess, because I said that. Sorry, Spooky. I guess you got to do that now. All right, no. But we got to get into it. The festivities aside, we got to get into this, okay? So, chapter 1033 of One Piece dropped a lot of bombshells on us, okay? We got character lore, we got sword lore, we got Haki lore, you know, and I don't know about you, but personally, I prefer sword lore as my go-to lore. I mean, you do like lore involving devil fruits, lore involving Haki, lore involving swords. I mean, swords are just the coolest part of One Piece, okay? So we got a lot of stuff involving that in Kozaburo, and then also we got some extra stuff involving King, which I'm not even going to address today because he's a Lunarian and he has other traits, like he can explode apparently now. That's a trait that they have, and we found out some stuff about them being gods, but whatever. That'll be a different video altogether. So I have a list of things today. So let's start with, let's just start with some more information about Kozaburo Shimotsuki, okay? Because this is an interesting character in that Oda sort of already revealed the basics of his backstory in the SBS, in the Tankobons, okay? So for that reason, I mean, it's not impossible that Oda might include a little bit more of Kozaburo in Wano, like we might have a flashback to see him like in his heyday when he actually crafted the Enma and the Wado. We might see him working along with Tenguyama Hitetsu, which, by the way, for a while there, I was under the assumption that Tenguyama and Kozaburo were like colleagues, like they were both swordsmiths at like the same time, and they were like really revered in their field, you know, like maybe Kozaburo was the greatest swordsmith in Wano and Tenguyama was like the second or something. Given the fact that Kozaburo is dead, and we don't know how old he is, that's something I would like to find out about him, you know, exactly, was Kozaburo like over 100 years old when he died or something, because that information is kind of important to know. And so it might have actually been more of a situation where Kozaburo might have been Tenguyama's swordsmithing like teacher. So even if it's like, you know, because Tenguyama right now is in his 80s, and we know Kozaburo died between 11 and 13 years ago in the current storyline, because Zoro met him when he was 8, and then Kuina died 11 years ago when Zoro was 10, and in that 2-year period, Kozaburo had passed away. All right, so at some point there. So even if Kozaburo was like 10, maybe 15 years older than Tenguyama, I could still see that playing out like way back in the day in Wano. Maybe Tenguyama was like 17 years old or something, and he went and traveled and he found Kozaburo in maybe like his early 30s, and he's like, teach me how to craft a mighty katana, and you know, Kozaburo like maybe took him under his wing. Maybe it was something like that, okay? But anyway, yeah, I don't know if we're gonna find out more about Kozaburo, because Oda has said it's more of like a side thing that he doesn't really want to focus the whole story on, and maybe this chapter is the most we're going to get. But just to recap a little bit of the stuff that we already know about, because a lot of things were hinted in the chapter. I remember there was the one scene where Zoro was kind of connecting the dots to everything, and he remembered that a bunch of kids in the dojo that he grew up in were saying that like, oh, did you know that the village, Shimotsuki village, was founded by pirates? Yeah, my grandma told me that. That's wild. And so a lot of people were a little confused by that, like, what? You know, the Shimotsuki village was founded by pirates? How does that work? So this was something that was explained in the SBS, but I'll just go over it again, okay? So the story with Kozaburo is that he was born in Wano, and he, crafted the Wano and the Enma while he was there. And then 55 years ago, he left Wano illegally with a group of people. He didn't just leave by himself. He had a bunch of people with him, and why exactly they decided to leave, we don't know. Maybe it was just like they were done with the isolationism, like it was stifling to them, so they just left. Keep in mind, this was long before Orochi and Kaido took over, okay? This was when the Kozuki clan, I guess at the time it would have been, 55 years ago, I guess Sukiyaki would have still been in charge. It was either Sukiyaki or Sukiyaki's father that were the shogun at the time. But, they decided to leave Wano for whatever reason, okay? And they took a ship, and they left, and they ended up in the east. And they landed on an island in the east that was a small little village that was being attacked by bandits, okay? And so the people of the village were being, killed and everything. And then that's right then there when Kozaburo and the samurai from Wano showed up, and they slew all of the bandits, and they took the villagers under their wing and taught them how to use swords, taught them how to fight, okay? And so therefore, I guess the village was pretty tiny at that point. Maybe it didn't have a name or whatever, but they decided to basically elect Kozaburo as the leader of the village, and therefore rename the village Shimotsuki Village after his surname, Shimotsuki, which also just translates to Frost Moon or the Moon of November, because in an old naming scheme, there's like, every month of the year has like a different moon named after it, and so November is the month of the Frost Moon, okay? And so at this time, he also meets his wife, and then 4 years after establishing Shimotsuki Village, Koshiro, who would later grow up to be Kuina's father and Zoro's sensei at Shimotsuki, that's Kozaburo's son, okay? And so that's the basic backstory we get there. So when the kids were running around the village being like, did you know the village was founded by pirates? I mean, that's sort of true because, technically speaking, they were breaking the law because they were leaving Wano, but they weren't pirates. They were just samurai, maybe trying to find, freedom to set up their own little Wano free of that isolationism, and they could do kind of whatever they wanted, very much like, people leaving England, during way back in the day and starting up colonies here and other places like that, looking for like religious freedom. Maybe something similar akin to that, okay? So that's the backstory we know about Kozaburo. That stuff was in SBS, and then the stuff we found out in the last chapter, chapter 1033. I don't know if we're going to get any more stuff involving him. I would love it, but I don't know if Oda really wants to focus on him. He might be like, okay, you know the gist about Kozaburo so much. Like, that's all you need to really know. Okay, so that's that. Next thing I want to bring up is the last line that Zoro had in the chapter, because this kind of sparked a little bit of confusion. And it's not like a huge deal. It's pretty much like either Zoro meant one thing or another, but either way, it's really not that big of a game changer, okay? So at the end of the chapter, after Zoro exudes his Conqueror's Haki, he charges his swords up with it, which, by the way, we'll talk about that in a second. But, King looks at him after using Conquerors, and King is like, oh, so you have kingly ambitions as well. You as well can use the Conqueror's Haki. And then, Zoro is just remembering everything, and he's about ready to, fight King anew, and he's like, I'm going to defeat you for my captain and for my oldest friend. And then that's the end of the chapter. So the little bit of confusion arose with, was Zoro referring to just Luffy exclusively, or was Zoro referring to Luffy plus Kuina? As in, like, I guess the way you could say it with Luffy is, I will defeat you for my captain's sake, my oldest friend. The idea that, like, Luffy was the first person Zoro was the first person Luffy really met on his journey. I mean, I guess Kobe, but does Kobe really count? Okay, Kobe kind of counts, yeah. Or maybe Zoro, well, I guess no. I guess it really doesn't make sense for Luffy to be both. And honestly, when I first read the chapter, I thought Zoro was referring to Luffy and Kuina, separately, the two big motivating factors here, because either way, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to just be Luffy. Because I guess you could say, it's like, well, Zoro was the first person to join the Straw Hat crew, so in a sense, you could say Luffy is his oldest friend there, but Zoro knew Johnny and Yosaku before Luffy. Luffy met Kobe and some other people before Zoro, so saying that doesn't really make a lot of sense. But there was just a little bit of confusion on how it was worded. But the way I took it was, oh no, he was referring to Luffy and Kuina as both of the people that have motivated him throughout his life to get him to where he is right now, okay? Luffy being the captain of his crew and being like, oh, I have to live up to the standard of Luffy. Luffy's gonna be king of the pirates someday. I gotta be the greatest swordsman someday, so I gotta live up to that standard for Luffy's sake. And then also Kuina, because Kuina's dream was to become the greatest swordsman in the world, and then she died, and then it was Zoro that had to take not only his own ambition, but hers as well, and that's sort of where he's at right now. now, okay? So that makes sense there. Not really, like I said, not really a huge game changer whether or not he meant just Luffy or Luffy plus Kuina, but I took it to mean the latter. Next, this is an interesting one, all right? So now we're going to talk about Kuina's death a little bit here, all right? So I mentioned this in the review, but I should have gone into a little bit more detail about the circumstances here. I've been seeing a lot of comments because we found out so much about what cursed blades really are that the implication seems to be some people are saying like, oh, what if it was because of the Wado Ichimonji that Kuina died? You know, because we find out about how, okay, you know, swords are not necessarily cursed in the sense that like demons or devils like possess them or anything. It's rather that swords, high quality swords, Meito, have certain personalities that are hard to master, okay? And some personalities might be, you know, tend to be a little bit more chaotic, as in like the Sandai Katetsu and the Katetsu swords in general, where if you don't know what you're doing and you're an inexperienced swordsman and you pick up a Katetsu sword, you might die. But it's not necessarily because the sword like possesses you or anything. It's just that the sword has a really rough personality and it's hard to master and you're just a weak swordsman, so you have to train to get stronger. That's the idea. The implication I got at the end of the chapter is that, you know, in order to a swordsman, any swordsman, if they're strong enough, if they train and they like steel themselves, you know, mind, body, and soul, can eventually master any sword that is considered cursed. You just have to have enough skill. And Zoro is kind of struggling with that right now with Enma. You could say Enma is also a cursed blade in that regard. So, because we know that now, people are saying, it's like, well, maybe because Kuina had the Wado Ichimonji, she wasn't strong enough, and that's why, you know, it was the Wado that killed her. You know, that was the reason that she died, or something like that. So, that's an interesting way of looking at it. I don't think that's the case, though. So, and Kuina's death is, like I said, there's different translations, and there was, like, censorship things involved, like with the 4Kids dub. So, in the canon of the manga, without even, because even the original anime kind of messes it up a little bit, but in the manga, what happens is that Zoro and Kuina have their fights. I think it was like 2,000 something battles that they have. Zoro can never best her, okay? She wins every time. And then finally, they have their last battle where Kuina wins. It's that epic battle, and it's on the side, it's at night, and then she wins, and it's the 2001st victory, okay? After the battle is over, Kuina and Zoro have like a heartfelt talk where she begins to break down and cry because she realizes, I will never become the greatest swordsman in the world because I am a girl and I will always lose out to the men of the world, basically. And she even goes on to say that her father, her own father, Koshiro, was the one that kind of told her that. Koshiro told her, you know, like, women will never be as strong as men when it comes to the way of the sword, okay? And so she really took that to heart, and it, like, destroyed her, because this was her ambition. So she was like, you know, no matter how hard I train, Zoro, even though I'm besting you right now, Zoro, you will eventually become stronger than me, okay? And so Zoro's like, you know, you don't talk like that, you are really strong, you know, I believe in you and all that. And then the next day, we don't see it, but the next day, Kuina dies, and you hear that it's like, oh, she fell down some stairs, okay? So the way I took that, at any rate, and I guess there's other ways you could view it, the way I took it was that Kuina ended her own life. You know, that was basically the code for it, okay? And that's the way I took that scene. So I don't really think it had anything to do with the Wado Ichimonji. I guess you could maybe look at it like, you know, she was trying to master the Wado, but she couldn't master it to a certain extent because she wasn't, like, skilled enough. And so because of that, it, like, you know, like, basically, like, made her feel, like, really upset that she could never be the strongest. But I don't know. I think it's just from the way that Koshiro was kind of speaking to her about this. Like, when your father sits you down and says, okay, honey, listen up. I know you want to be the strongest swordsman in the world, but I don't know what to say. You're not. It's just like, when your father tells you that, I don't think it really has anything to do with, like, a sword or anything. I think it has something to just do with, like, Koshiro not really believing in his daughter or something, and I think that's really what made her upset, okay? So, and also, once again, like, there's theories abound of whether or not Kuina is even really dead. You know, because like the Revolutionary Army was connected to Shimotsuki Village a little bit because they stopped there for supplies. So I know there's like a theory out there that's like maybe Kuina's alive and she's a secret undercover agent for the revolutionaries, or she's gonna pop up somewhere, or she's actually Tashigi but with amnesia. You know, like first off, no, we're not. I mean, we already did that with Sabo, and it's already stretching a little bit thin with the plot involving Big Mom. Not another amnesia plot. I think amnesia plots are like one of the most cliche, you know, Days of Our Lives, you know, afternoon soap opera kind of, oh no, Mike was, you know, about to marry his beloved, but then he got into a car accident and he completely forgot about her existence now. Like, I think that's the most cliche thing ever. It's kind of like every story, like, Oda, all right, you've been writing this manga for 20 plus years, and you've never really implemented the amnesia plotline, but you did it with Sabo, and then right after that, you started doing it with Big Mom. So it's like, all right, enough is enough. Let's not do that again. I think Tashigi is like the cousin of Kuina. Like, basically, I have like a little family tree chart here thing, and like I said, Kozaburo arrived in the East Blue and married an East Blue woman in the village, and then that's how Koshiro was born, and then Koshiro is the father of Kuina, okay? Well, what if that East Blue woman also had like an ex-husband or somebody else that she met before she met Kozaburo, or at somewhere else? I can't remember if Kuina and Tashigi are the same age or one is older than the other. I think Tashigi is slightly older than Kuina, I think. I'd have to double check on that. I'll throw in like a little subtitle or whatever. But anyway, regardless, it could be a situation where she had more than one child with somebody else, okay? And so that would make Kuina and Tashigi half-sisters, okay? And I could see that, okay? Maybe that's the situation at any rate. I don't think they're the same person or anything like that, okay? Well, anyway, yeah, that's the situation with Kuina, the way I look at it. Maybe she was just so dejected because she couldn't master the Wado. But I think it has more to do with the way that she was raised and the thing that Koshiro said to her. I think that was the thing that really, like, destroyed her. So let's talk now about Conqueror's Haki. So I mentioned it, but I kind of glossed over the moment where not only did Zoro use regular Conquerors, like the Conquerors that Luffy used at the, you know, at Fishman Island to knock out all the fishmen or whatever. No, it was he used Conquerors to knock everybody out, but then he also supercharged his swords, all three of them, with Conquerors and the armament, like the mixture, okay? The same techniques that we saw, you know, Big Mom using, Kaido using, and then Luffy eventually using against Kaido and all that stuff. We see the black lightning and stuff firing off his swords, and he's just like, all right, I've kind of learned a little bit more about my past, and I've been like reaffirmed of why I'm here and why I'm fighting you and everything like that. Let's get it on, King. Let's go, okay? So all I really have to say about that at this point, like, I guess I wasn't super surprised by that because we're moving on into this final saga of One Piece, and it's like, all right, Luffy has figured out the mechanism for combining armament and his conquerors together in order to, you know, use attacks. Now, in Luffy's case, he doesn't use weapons. He just uses these hands. So, you know, charging up conquerors and armament into his fist to fight makes sense for Luffy. Zoro, however, is way more accustomed to using swords, and so using it on his swords makes sense. I think there's still going to be a learning curve here. I'm not sure if King would be able to do the same thing, but King being a Lunarian might put him a cut above the rest, even if he's fighting against an armament Haki master. Now, King can obviously use Haki, but even if he couldn't, I feel like his Lunarian biology just kind of gives him an edge, right? Because of all the crazy stuff he can do and all the environments he can survive in and everything. But now we're getting into a Conqueror's Haki armament clash with Zoro, one of the strongest swordsmen out there. So it's probably going to push King's durability to its limits, right? Definitely. Absolutely. A little bit of discussion on exactly how Zoro is going to defeat King. You know, I've seen a lot of theories regarding this. One of them was, well, King can manipulate fire, right? Well, Zoro picked up that flame cutting technique from Kinemon. He basically stole it, but yeah, maybe he could use that technique against King. And I'm like, all right. I mean, I think that would work if, like, King fired, like, a fireball or, like, a flamethrower kind of technique or something, which King could definitely do. He can manipulate fire and, like, throw it. If King used that against Zoro, I think he'd be able to cut it up. But, you know, he's been trying strongest moves against King, like the Lion Song and everything, and it really hasn't been denting him. So there's something else going on here. One of the most interesting theories that I saw was that what if King is not like the physical body of King, like the guy wearing the gimp suit. What if that's not his real body? What if it's the flame that it's the real body, like the flame on his back? Or even beyond that, what if there's like a little flame, like a little ember inside of his body that's really the core of his being? And it's kind of like a water elemental or something like that. Like there's a clump in the beginning that's like a soul package or whatever. And it's like you could slash the water or the fire or the earth or the air all you want, but you're just not going to take down the actual entity unless you destroy its core. So that might be the situation there, where King's body is like an armor, like a husk, and he has to really penetrate that to get to the core and then stab it, and then that'll, destroy his being. And that's maybe why Lunarians were so hard to kill and why they were able to adapt to every harsh environment. Those are just some ideas I've seen out there. But as I said in the review, just to reiterate, Zoro is not going to be able to defeat King with just simple brute force techniques. Like, I'm just going to use, like, Lion Song to cut him really fast and really hard. Like, that's just not going to work against him, all right? So there has to be some other thing. And it might come down to, like, maybe it's like, all right, instead of slashing him, well, no, he already tried slashing him in the head, and it didn't work. So I was going to say, maybe not aim for the body, aim for the head, but he already did aim for the head a few times, and that didn't really work. It knocked off his helmet, so that's that. Oh, something else involving King not bleeding. I know we're kind of getting more into King right now, so I'll save that for the next video. But some people were like, well, he actually did bleed before, and this is something that it's like, whoa, okay, I didn't even notice this. But yeah, if you go back and look at the chapter where Marco was fighting him, I think it was like when Marco did that flying knee, like right into freaking King's face, you do see King coughing up blood. Now, I don't know, that might just be a thing that Oda forgot about, or something he overlooked, or it might have been a thing because Marco was using blue fire and King manipulates fire. Maybe there was something going on there, okay? Maybe it was like, it was super effective, right? But in either way, I mean, it's going to be something difficult there. Now, wait, where is Marco right now? Marco is carrying Izo to go and locate the Kanzenbo, Kanjuro's little creation, right? So he's not really heading to Zoro right now. Although, after he drops Izo off, maybe Marco could circle around and he could find Zoro, because everybody's sort of scattered right now. That would actually be really cool if it was like, oh, you're fighting King Zoro. Well, you're not going to be able to defeat him just by using sheer physical force, but my blue Phoenix fire was able to do something there. So it'd actually be really cool if Marco takes his fire and, like, ignites Zoro's swords. So then Zoro has Conqueror's Haki, Armament Haki infused, blue Phoenix fire, Wado Ichimonji. Yes! That would be cool. That'll finish him off, right? That is the case if that was like an actual hint that Oda was leaving and it wasn't just a mistake. See, here's the thing. Oda does indeed drop a lot of hints throughout his manga. Like, there's a bunch of them, right? There was that contest over in Japan. That was like the One Piece Trivia King Master Contest or whatever. And I got a lot of tweets about that. Like, people were sending me like the YouTube video and everything like, oh, check out this quiz. It's great. Tekking, you should be in this. And I was looking at some of the questions, guys, and I'm like, I would have flunked that so hard. No, seriously, you haven't seen it. Like, let me give you an example of one of the questions that was on this Ultimate One Piece Trivia Contest, okay? One of the questions was, when Sanji was locked in the dungeon at the Germa Kingdom with the Iron Mask on, one of the Germa soldiers gave him food and a bottle of something. What was written on the label of the bottle that the soldier gave to Sanji in the jail cell? And I went back and looked at the panel, and it was literally like one panel, and he's holding the tray, and the bottle was like slightly turned, and you could barely even make out what it says. That was one of the questions. It's like, holy crap, that's the level they're dealing with, right? So my point is that Oda can hide stuff like that a lot in the story, but every now and then he does still make mistakes. He does make mistakes. Like a couple of chapters ago, I remember he forgot to draw Ulti's mask when she was like rushing to attack somebody. So, every once in a while, so it's important to mention like every single thing that's included. It might not always be a secret. Sometimes it might just be a genuine mistake on Oda's part. But if that is the case, and, King was able to be hurt by Marco, maybe Marco could show up and help out Zoro. All right. I feel like I'm getting a little bit off the railroad now for this, so I think this is a good place to probably end this video, and we'll pick this up with a King-related video later. about the Lunarians. But yeah, that was an interesting chapter. We found out a lot of stuff there about Curse Blades, Kozaburo, a little bit stuff about Kuina, and now Zoro is fighting against King, and like some way he has to defeat him. Or it could just be the Conquerors plus the armament might be enough to bypass any defenses that he has. So that might be the situation as well. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, and also I hope he masters Enma in the process. And also hopefully mastering Enma in the process now. Just giving Enma all the Conquerors and armament I guess he can muster, and it's like maybe like a trust exercise, I think, where it's like, okay, you give all of your Haki over to Enma, and that would normally kill you, but in the case with Enma, it's like, oh, you're giving me all of what you have, so I'll like maintain it and amplify it and maybe give it back and something like that. Sort of like a weapon, kind of like a Meister-weapon relationship maybe in Soul Eater, like the Soul Resonance thing, you know, I don't know, like Zoro pulls all of his Haki into Enma, and it's just like, all right, then it bounces back to Zoro, and it's like, all right, here we go, you know, like maybe it's something like that, you know, like Kishin, Lunarian Hunter, you know, there we go, something like that. But anyway, yeah, thanks for watching the video, guys. I do not have dinosaur facts for you today. I'll get those back to you in the next video, so I apologize for that. But anyway, yeah, thanks for watching. This is Barry, Christmas tree, spooky sweater, signing out. Later, everyone.